Welcome, David. It's Tom Abram here. We're in the WCIT hall on the 23rd of May 2019.
Indeed
it's
we
about
are.
11:30. So thanks very much for coming along to
pleasure.
Talk about your background and experiences. As I said, I thought we might work chronologically through your life and career. So, what would you say about your start in life, your family background and so on?
Well, very working class. And my father was a socialist, out and out socialist, which I never really agreed with. But, shop steward and this kind of thing. And in fact, my grandfather was as well. So there's a very sort of socialist group there. And I lived on a council estate, Yorkshire council estate. That's where I was brought up. So it's very working class. I think the thing that changed my perspective was that two things. One is I had a natural ability for maths. I have to say at that time, I had no idea I did, but I obviously did, as I found out later. And I passed the 11 plus to go to grammar school. And what I found when I got to the grammar school was that I was rubbing shoulders with a whole raft of people from very different backgrounds. That I felt through the work and what have you that I was equal to them. So it kind of lifted, I suppose, my view of both myself and maybe what I might achieve. I had friends whose father were lawyers and they were going to be a lawyer, and that never occurred to me before then.
So I'm a grammar school boy, and of course I, like many others, think that grammar schools are a great thing in terms of social mobility.
Yeah,
so
me
do
too.
you think that's what it did?
Absolutely, no question. I think without that, I wouldn't have looked to do the things that I eventually did. It just would never have occurred to me that I could do them.
Yeah. It looks like your mother was a professional, though, a building society manager. So.
Yeah, she was. For a lot of the time, though, when we were growing up, she just looked after the home.
Right.
She didn't work in that while I was growing up.
Very traditional kind of role in those days.
Classic, Yorkshire. Yeah. And it's only really when the kids left that she had the time, I suppose, and the opportunity to go and do something for herself, and she did. So she clearly had the brains to do it, but it wasn't the role to start with, certainly in those days.
Your father was an engineer. Did
Yes.
that influence your direction towards technology at all?
No. None whatsoever. I didn't really even know what an engineer was, to be honest. And the thing is that through those grammar school years, whilst something stood out, there were two of us who always topped the maths numbers every year in the exams. Myself and a lad called Peter Denton. And he went on to get a scholarship at Cambridge on the back of his maths ability. And we were always battling for who was number one in there. So that, and I quite like that, because the one thing I've always been is competitive in sort of everything. But it was the sports side of things that I really wanted to win, if you like. So I would win at all the schools racing things, and then I won the Yorkshire schools cross country thing. More out of bloody mindedness than anything. I actually won the Yorkshire schools cross-country thing, whilst I was coming down with German measles. And the next day, I was out flat. And I didn't feel very well during the day, but I was so bloody determined to win it that, so I was driven to succeed, whatever I was doing. But from quite an early age, I got spotted as having some talent in playing football.
Yeah.
And at school, I signed schoolboy papers, and I turned down Leeds to go to Hull just because it was so much more convenient for me to get there, because you had to go training 2 nights a week and playing for the under-18 team and the youth team, the FA Youth Cup, and I played for the East Riding FA under-18 team in the national championships, and I felt that's what I'm going to do. And I have to say, I kind of put most other things aside.
Yeah, because I don't think you mentioned in your bio the expertise at maths. It was more of the focus on the sport.
I probably didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't occur to me then.
Yes.
But afterwards, I realised that was one of the things. It's interesting you say, were you an engineer? Well, not really. But I certainly, the maths thing worked.
Yeah.
It dawned on me one day, actually, about being a potential engineer when I was the finance director of a business and we had a computing system.
Yeah.
It actually is I'm jumping now, but it's actually where I started, where I was approached to go and do something with Hewlett-Packard. And I watched this guy. We had these discs holding data. They were quite mini computers, and every so often they'd go out of sync, and some engineer would have to come in and align the discs. And I watched this guy, and I thought, I could do that. That's not hard.
Yeah.
And I started to think, well, and he's an engineer, and I was starting to think, well, maybe that's and I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Not only I could, but I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So that started me to think.
Yeah.
Before then, I'd never given it a thought.
Just going back to the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, people often say that there's a link between business and sport. That people who are good at sport are good at business. And there is even an argument that you should do more sport in schools because it helps people to get better at doing other things. What's your thought on that? Is there a link? Is it cause and effect, or what?
I've never thought about that. What I think is, though, you do develop being a member of the team. There's no question. In the sports I played, anyway, which were team games, it was a team, and you had to know what your part of it was, and I also ended mostly leading the teams. I was captain of the teams pretty much all the way through. Not my decision, of course, but even at the junior school, I was captain of the football team, and wherever it was. And I think that's just because I actually shouted at everybody and talked too much, and they thought we'd better. The only way of shutting him up is to make him captain. Nobody else will get a word in. So at that level, I was developing the skills of getting a team to actually play, because there wasn't a lot of coaching from teachers and what have you.
Yeah.
There was at grammar school. There was in the techniques of rugby, because none of us knew how to play that. But in terms of as a team and a strategy, there was none of that.
Yeah.
It's just basics. So we kind of worked it out as we went along as a group.
Yeah.
So it helped me. There's no question. It helped me. It gave me confidence too to perform.
Yeah.
Somebody once said to me that when I was on stage, which I loved to do.
All right. You like performing?
Loved
performing as well.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Bigger audience, the better.
Yeah.
And all the way through my life, I've done that. I've enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And somebody said to me, well, that's because, you're used to playing football in front of a big crowd. You're used to it.
Yeah.
And getting a reaction from the crowd,
yes.
good or bad, depending whether it's your supporters or the other side.
Yeah.
But you're used to it. And I think that probably did help me with the confidence.
Yeah. So you think some of the aptitudes are common between sport and business?
I think so. But I don't think you have to have sport to be successful in business. If I look, for example, at Branson, he had no idea about sport whatsoever.
Is that right? Yeah.
You could, and there are some people who think he's got no idea about business, but he certainly didn't have any idea about sport, and so, never came close to that link. So I don't think it's.
But you clearly have an intense will to win, judging by your cross country with German measles.
No question.
Winning the first, it's a knockout.
That was. I love that. I love that. I mean, I got. It had to be. I was actually not around much at the time because I was actually playing for Hull City youth team, and this was a series run in I think it was '66. It was run that summer. It was the first one they ever did. It's a knockout, and it was a competition between seaside towns.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah, and I really, I looked at it, and a mate of mine had done the final challenge, as it was called, in the semi-final, which was cricket, knocking down stump. And then the guy who organised it all for Bridlington came knocking on the door, and he said, we've got this final on Sunday, and they tell us the final challenge, which may well decide the whole thing, so it's important, is going to be a football-based thing. So I don't know anything else at the moment, but are you up for it? Try to keep me away from it. And so, and that was a fabulous day. Actually, I loved it. The other thing was, we're playing Lytham St Anne's, and the way they worked it is they had a number of events in Lytham and a number in Brid, and this was the final challenge. And basically, for all the games up to the final one, you got 2 points, and then the final challenge, you chose the level of difficulty you went for. They had the mayor in 2 mayors.
Oh right, yes.
In a studio in Leeds. MacDonald Hobley was hosting it. That shows you how far back it goes. And the mayor decided whether they went for 3 points or 5 points.
Yeah.
And whoever was behind got to choose. Well, they chose to go for 3. And what it turned out to, it was a bit like Skittles thing with 10 goalkeepers and football, and you just knocked them down.
Yeah.
And you had so long to do it.
I think I might remember watching it.
Absolutely. Anyway, so they went for 3, because what they said is that we've seen this in the past where Bridlington's been leading by a point, and the opposite side go for 5 and they don't get it and they lose anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for 3, get us in front. And this guy from Lytham, this young lad, just scraped through in his 30 seconds to get the 3. No, there were 10, so it would be 6. Knock 6 down for 5 points, and knock all 10 down. Knock 6 down for 3 points, all 10 down for 5. So he knocked him down, got his 3 points, got in front. And actually, I'd been fooling about on the rehearsal because I had a few badges on my stuff, like East Riding County FA and stuff. I had a whole city blazer, and I think the whole point was to try and intimidate this kid into thinking he wasn't going to do it. But what he did, which was ridiculous, is he chipped at this ball. He got carried away by the event, and he chipped it each time, put some air under it, and they're bouncing all over the place, over the top. So he managed just to scrape through.
Right.
Whereas actually, it was so simple that all you did was roll the ball. You just rolled it at them. Yeah. And they were wide enough that if you got anywhere near, you'd knock them over. So I knocked them down 6 out of 6 balls. I just knocked 6, boom, 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 6 down. Because he'd made it look so hard, it looked like I was some sort of superstar. And for a while, it was ridiculous. The next week in Brid, I had people chasing me all over the place. The local papers were full of it, and Jesus. But there were 13 million people watching it.
Yeah.
And I thought that I actually felt that was really, really a good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Loved that.
Yeah. I should have asked, what position did you play as a footballer?
It depends. Now I played everywhere, depending on the standard. The higher the standard, the further back I played. I actually played sweeper for the professional clubs.
Right.
And I went. The first trial I went on for was Leeds, and they wanted me to sign, but the travelling while I was at school was impossible, really. But I had a trial there, and I went there thinking I was a creative midfield player, and they told me they were going to put me in as a sweeper. Never played there before at all. But this is maybe a classic example of what you're saying before, Tom, that there was a guy that was also on trial, South African, called, it was the first black player ever, Albert Johansson. And Albert was there and on trial. These trial games they mix some of the first team, 1 or 2 of those, and some of the reserves in it, so that it's a test. And they played me actually on the left-hand side of the defence, left back, which I'd never played before. And they played Albert Johansson on the right-hand side, attacking. And he was a flyer. It was the fastest thing you've ever seen. It's a sad case, actually, Albert. But he couldn't cross a ball.
All right. Yeah.
So he's flying,
Yeah.
but he couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know this. So I'm playing left back. Okay. And of course they know, the midfield know what they're doing. So they chip this ball over the top of me. And Albert's off like, very hair. And lost him. And I thought, I've come all this way for a trial and I'm looking stupid. So the third time, I hung back, as they called reading, well, like the way you read the game. They said, well, I just hung back, further back. And I managed to time getting to him when the ball did. And I smacked him so bloody hard because I was that irritated by it all, and him, that it was known, well, I didn't realise, that it was known at Leeds as a row Z tackle. Now, A is at the front of the stand and Z's at the back. And it's called that because the opponent's supposed to end up in row Z. And I thought, oh, bloody hell, because, he's rolling all over the place. And these were the days when you didn't feign that.
Yeah.
And about 4 guys come running, coaches and whatever, come running over from the touchline. I thought, well, that was the end of that. One of them went to pick him up, and the other 3 were coming over and said, that's exactly what we want to see.
That was the lead style.
That was it. Days. That was it. And I thought, oh, bloody hell. Yeah.
So, moving on to more work-related things.
Yeah.
So you left school after what were called O levels in those days,
absolutely,
and went for the football. But you then kind of shortly after switched into a professional career. So what happened to the football?
Got injured.
Oh dear.
Yeah, ankle injury.
Yeah.
That never healed.
Oh gosh.
It's one of those things, and it was devastating for a while actually. And so I kind of drifted into things after that because I was absolutely intent on doing this. And I thought I was reasonably good. I had a reasonably good standard. I was keeping out of the Hull City team a guy called Stuart Pearson, who went on to play for Manchester United and England. And he was same age as me, and he was same position.
Wow.
And he's kept out. So I had a standard. But then I got this tackle, and basically the ligaments in the ankle, which are kind of like elastic band, in that tackle just stretched to beyond mending. And I'd have been better actually if my ankle had broken, because the bones would have mended, but the ligaments don't. These days you can get replacement ones.
Yeah.
The first person to have that operation was Stuart Francis, about 10 years after me. Went to America to have this, but it never mended, and so these ligaments never came back strong enough. And I had at least a year trying to get that and come into recovery. But as soon as I had what's called a block tackle, where you put all your weight behind it and the opposition does the same, and the ball, as soon as I did that, it went again. Yeah. So in the end I had to give up the professional football. So then I didn't know what the hell to do, to be honest. What do you do?
So you seem to start a kind of what we might say these days looks like a kind of apprenticeship process of going into banking and doing some studying or training or whatever whilst working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a job at the bank, and which I was very grateful for. The maths thing I think helped. I had no intention of working for a bank. I saw the job advertised when I talked to them, and they said, "Well, give you a job." I needed a job. What the hell do I do now that the football is not going to happen? So I went there. It was the most boring thing I think I've ever done, but there was a little link in there that helped. And but to get on in the bank, you had to have qualifications. So I went 4 nights a week to Scarborough, which is 20 miles away, to do night school.
Yeah, night school, as they used to call it.
And then I went into accounting from that. And the thing that triggered me there was, there is a thing about the bank I'll come back to in a second, but I used to process people's salaries.
Yeah.
And I'd looked at all these bloody salaries going through of accountants, and I thought, I could do that. And the bank had a brochure that told you what you would earn at this age level.
Yep.
And I remember that you had to be 31 before you got £1,000 a year. Now, I mean, obviously this is the 60s. But I thought, this is ridiculous. That guy who's thick as two short planks that I'm serving on a monthly basis when he comes in actually is earning double what I'm earning.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And then I worked out, or somebody told me, that actually a significant part of part one of I got part one of the banking exams.
Yeah.
But a significant part of that was exactly the same as it was for the accounting exams.
Right.
Same subjects, same standard. And it was only part two that became more industry focused. And so I talked to the people at Scarborough, and they said, yeah, you can take those with you into the accounting thing, and you're going to do accounting. So I thought, well, this has got to give me more scope than banking. And I got a job as an accountant.
So where was the accountant job? Was in the bank, was it?
No, separate. This is not.
Oh, right, okay. So you seem to go from being a bank clerk to being a salesman for Olivetti.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah.
That wasn't part of the process of qualifying as an accountant.
No. This is the Gordon Armstrong one.
Yeah.
Is the accounting.
But you had a brief flirtation with sales in the IT industry.
I did. No, I did. Yes, that was interesting. A lot of fun. I thought I could earn more money.
Yeah.
Company car,
Yeah.
This is where I really had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And these salesmen kept coming around, trying to flog you an accounting system. And I'd ask them questions and they couldn't answer them because they weren't accountants. So I thought, maybe I can have a go at that. So I had a go at that.
Yeah.
And that was very educational. The one thing I'll say about Olivetti, and it was the same with Hewlett Packard. They're one of the few companies who would take people who aren't trained and train them in every aspect of the job, in the product, but also in sales. So if you'd never sold anything, they'd send you on their own internal training course.
Yeah.
And I learned an awful lot from Olivetti.
Yes.
I'm not
sure.
They
were renowned as the training ground.
Absolutely. And it was we had some fun there. I remember, just an aside, I was there in St Guildford, just south of Guildford, at the Hazelmere, at the training centre, and they'd got a new country manager every year. A new Italian would be posted into the UK to be the country manager, and this particular year he'd just sort of arrived, and all the country managers had been invited down to go through their plans with him at Hazelmere, and we were, although we were just on a training course, we were able to sit in on this. And they were all of the branches were saying it's going to be a lot harder year next year. Times are tough. It's going to be harder. We're not going to do the numbers we did this year next year. And he got to about the fourth one of these, and this Italian guy said, "Stop! He said, "This is not good." He said, "You think I know bugger nothing, but I know bugger everything." And I thought, well done. No, but you think I know bugger all, but I know. No, you think I know bugger nothing, but I know bugger all. That was it. And of course the whole place erupted. You never really. I don't think you lasted the year.
No, I think an interesting thing about your career is you seem to have worked for this, all the iconic companies that kind of define the history of the IT industry in the 20th century.
Well, of course, I didn't see that plot.
No.
But I think what I did do, it's interesting that one of the great advisors that I've ever personally had, coach almost, is John Harvey Jones. And I was really lucky, just struck lucky at DEC, where he retired from ICI, and we asked him to be a non-exec director. And the project he was asked to look at is the one I was running. So I spent a lot of time with him, just pure coincidence. But I thought he was a superb. What he could do, and he said, this is what I could do, is see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
He says, you can, all this stuff going on, but you can see what really is important. He certainly could do that.
Yeah.
And I was delighted. He said he thought that about me. And I think that this thread probably was seeing what the next thing's going to be.
Yeah, well, it seems it seems to run through your sequence of roles up to the BCS, with those companies, and then the internet and the
exactly. Yeah. Although the drive to Netcom wasn't the internet.
Yeah.
It was a different motivation there.
Then just coming back to those early jobs then, so you, post Olivetti, you pursued the accountancy qualifications further.
Yeah.
And you ended up in sometime between 1972 to 78 as finance director and then as managing director of a company. So that's quite an achievement.
Yeah, well, again, a series of luck, really. I went in there initially to try and sell them an accounting machine.
Right.
And it was there was a gap, some time between that but I'd got on well with the directors of this company. There were two brothers who ran it, and they were selling out 6 months later. They were selling out to a takeover group, but their accounting systems were absolutely appalling. And I thought, classic for an Olivetti accounting machine. And they put me off. I mean, I convinced them.
Yeah.
They put me off, and I thought, that was a waste of time. But actually, they put me off because they were looking to sell the thing. They didn't want to spend money. So then I got a call saying, "Do you want to come back and talk to the people who are taking over? Because they're interested in somebody, and maybe you, putting an accounting system in and becoming effectively the accountant." And I went to talk to them, and I thought, this seems like maybe something that's worth doing. So I did that over a period of time before I decided. But I did that, and I put in an Olivetti accounting system. Don't think I claimed the commission on it from Olivetti. But and then gradually, it wasn't that gradual, but they didn't really have any management in this organisation because the brothers had retired, and it was a London-based company, and they were looking to grow and put somewhere. And gradually they asked me to be finance director.
Yeah.
And then
we
had a couple of attempts at finding a managing director that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so they eventually asked me to do that side of it. And it was a surprise to me, actually, I have to say, to be offered that job. Yeah.
So that was you were an MD by the time you were 30 then?
I think it was 28. Yeah.
And that was in agricultural
engineering. Well, basically selling tractors and combine harvesters and all the equipment for farming. Yeah. And I had people, obviously, who knew that business and who could sell tractors.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't doing that myself. I was just running the business, and we grew it quite successfully. And then, interestingly, a combination of things all got in the way of that. And if that hadn't happened, I might have stayed there. But we were the agents for International Harvester.
Right.
Nearly all of our kit was International Harvester. And you basically, it's a bit like having, a Ford motor franchise.
Yeah.
And they were UK headquartered in Doncaster, which was just down the road from us. And one day one of the major guys came in and talked to us. He said, "Can I come and talk to you?" So we'd smarten everything up, polish International Harvester tractors. And he came in and he said, "I've got some bad news for you." He said, International Harvester have gone into bankruptcy in the US. So I said, "What's that mean for here? We won't get any kit. It all gets imported. We don't make it here."
Yeah.
So kind of what you've got is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So we fished around then for a while, see if we could get alternatives. But there were poor alternatives. There was an Italian. We took on an Italian tractor company called SAME, S-A-M-E, absolutely useless. So, and none of the farmers, of course, around were interested in that. And the other major brands like Ford and what we called Deere, but John Deere, and all the other brands were already well covered by other dealers. So we had no future really at all. But I'd done a lot of work on trying to improve the profitability of that business because it wasn't as profitable as it should be. One of the big problems of that industry is that it's so seasonal. So unlike a car dealership where you're always supplying parts to cars, in that business your ploughing kit lasts about 4 weeks, twice a year.
Yeah.
So if you've got too many of them, too many spare parts, you're going to carry them all year without a sale. And they had no real management process on that. So they had far too much money tied up in stock. I mean, this was the issue. So I started looking at doing something there and got talking to some people who had something they developed for the motor trade. And I said to them, can we, is there any way we can build seasonality into this? Because apart from that, it was fine. So we developed that. This was all running on HP.
Right.
And in the end, HP were very keen on what we'd done because they thought we could sell this to lots of other people.
Yep.
So
see where this is going.
So they came and talked to me about it, and the guy said, do you want to sort of get involved, consulting whatever about this product, because we're going to support this application developer, develop it. And I said, sorry, I'm going to be here because I've just heard International Harvester gone bust, and I'm going to have to do something else.
Yeah.
And then I got a call out of the blue from a woman called Karen Blue from Hewlett Packard one Sunday afternoon, and she said she was about an hour on the phone going on about, what we're interested in is what we need is someone who understands the computing side, particularly on our mini computers, and who knows how the finance structure works in the UK, because we are building a series of products called HP Financial Accounting, which I had a battle eventually to get changed because, of course, it's FA, which wasn't the best title you could ever come up with. And we want someone who's got affinity for accounting and who knows how the accounting system should work in the UK. And so we're looking for someone to sort of be the knowledge base of that. That was the job. It wasn't anything else. And she'd, at the end of it, she said, "Well, look," and she kept talking about what I thought was Birmingham, and she kept saying, "Well, why don't you come over for a weekend?" And I thought, well, I've been to Birmingham. I don't need to go to Birmingham. I know what Birmingham's like. And I said that to her, and there's sort of stunned silence for about 10 seconds, and she said, No, I'm talking about Böblingen. Oh, right, what? Yeah, near Stuttgart. Ah, that's different. We're going to have to start this conversation again. So anyway, I was really interested in that, and I thought, well, my wife, we had 2 young kids. They were about 4 and 7. And I thought, well, Anne isn't going to want to go to. We never talked about anything like that. And I was gobsmacked when I talked to her about, because of course I'm there on the phone for an hour and a half, and at the end of it she says, "Who the hell was that? What was it?" And I told her, and she said, "Well, if they're daft enough to pay for us a weekend, why don't we just go? Get a free weekend in wherever it is."
Yeah.
So we went on the basis of a free holiday at the expense of Hewlett Packard. But we love the place. It was a fantastic setting. It's southern Germany. Well, it's on the outskirts. It's 12 miles or so from Stuttgart. But the Böblingen is Böblingen, Sindelfingen, 2 towns join up. Sindelfingen is the centre of Mercedes-Benz. So, and the effect of that is that there's huge amounts of money piled into the town from Mercedes. So there's every facility you could imagine.
And is that where you had to go to work for HP?
Yeah, joined them in there.
Right. So this was 1978.
Big decision.
You moved to Germany.
Yeah.
And all the time you were working for HP, were you based there or?
No. We had to make a decision. We were there, I think, a couple of years. Something feels like that. But we had to make a decision about the schooling. And we developed this product, and it was a really good series of products. It wasn't just one, it was a really good series of products. I had more fun during that time in Germany than the rest of my career put together, business time. We just had some amazing...
Was that Germany or HP? Or?
It was the whole thing, really. It was just the thing. I mean, I have to say that throughout my early career in IT, we had a lot of fun anyway. It was just that kind of thing. Yeah. But we had a weeks-long we had as we who were we'd never done presentations or anything in this group. They were really technical people, accounting or whatever, and I made some lifelong friends of some people who went a long way. Nick Barley is just a really close friend. I don't know if you know Nick, but he's a really good friend of mine. But he was marketing director at Microsoft here, and eventually he came to work for me in Germany. I didn't recruit him, but he worked for me there. No, they did a week's course in presentation skills.
Right.
I mean, a week.
Yeah.
And because we'd never presented anything.
Yeah.
So, I struggled to start with working in an open plan environment. I'd always had an office.
Yeah.
All this noise going on.
Yeah.
So, presenting stuff, never done anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic course. They had a German guy do it, and he was retired age, written several books. He was considered to be the best person in Germany for this kind of skill.
Yeah.
So we had this week-long course. He and the people in the team were a real mixture of some Germans, three I think Germans, myself and Barley, and a couple of support people from the UK. The UK was going to be where these were launched, so there was a bigger leaning towards UK people.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of Americans who were over because we were trying to make sure that the accounting products were integrated into the manufacturing products that were done out in California. So it was a real mix, and this guy came in German, and he started speaking to us in German.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great course, isn't it? Anyway, he did have English, but it wasn't great. And he gave us a copy of his book, which was in German. And, but the course was fantastic. And I remember at the end of the course, they asked us to do a profile thing on it. And I wrote that I've never had so much fun in my life, but I don't think I learnt much. That's actually what I did on the day the thing finished.
Do you still believe that?
No, I didn't believe it a month later.
Yeah.
Because a month later, I'm doing presentations.
Yeah.
And I realised that every presentation was using things I learned during that week. And it was just how we did it. And so I actually went back to them and I said, look, I completely screwed up that evaluation. I'm finding I'm using it all the time.
So HP, must have been an exciting place. Global company.
Yeah.
They were very well regarded, weren't they?
They were. They were.
At the forefront of I suppose the small end of the computer age, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Workstations and stuff.
Yeah, they were, and very technical to start with. They wanted to get into the commercial market. They were the HP. They brought out something called the HP 3000 and an operating system, MPE, to go with it. And what they had were products that were for manufacturing and various other kinds of product development. But the data coming out of that wasn't going anywhere. And it certainly wasn't going onto HP machines. So they came up with this thing: we must develop order processing and accounting applications so that the whole thing is a complete offer to the customer. Yeah. And that's what this development was.
Right.
And then for political reasons, they decided to make that in Europe.
Yeah.
Internal HP politics. And therefore they'd make it at this European headquarters site in Berlin. But it's got to be English language to start with. So we'll have the UK market as the test market.
Right.
And that's why they were looking for people, as it turned out, like me. And then they saw something in me that I hadn't. They said, we think you can become a marketing person. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about, because I didn't. And they said, well, look, you're sort of a consultant at the moment, saying, no, this thing doesn't work like that. It's got to be like that on an accounting basis. But we think you can actually present this to customers. And I said, I have no idea. So then they started this. The training thing came after that, and we had a few technical guys as well. And Nick Barley went on that course as well. Fabulous course, that. It's the funniest week of my life, that, actually, from a business point of view, but we haven't got time to go into it because it's a week there. So they sent me on a course to Henley Management College, a week's course residential course on marketing.
Yeah.
The new values of marketing or something. And I really enjoyed that, I have to say. And it just had a fit for me. I thought, this is what I want to do, actually. I don't want to be sat in the background saying, let's do that little thing and get somebody else to do that. I want to be out front presenting this stuff and marketing it to customers. And so I then moved into a marketing role initially in Germany. But then the UK organisation, when they launched, wanted someone to lead that launch in the UK. And we had a big decision to make about the kids' schools, because whilst the German schools were very good, they were different to the UK. And we felt it was, my kids were coming up to the stage, my eldest one was coming up to where he would start secondary school. And in the UK. I mean, they got on fine in the international schools in Germany up to that. But what you couldn't do fairly to them was to swap halfway through secondary school. It would be really hard for them.
Yeah.
And we had to make a decision. We're either going to stay in Germany until not just my eldest son, but my youngest one sees himself through there, or we have to go back.
Yeah.
And although we loved it there, and the kids loved it there, we decided long term we really ought to go back. The UK were offering me this job, so we went back to the UK.
Yeah. So you came back to run the finance industry business, is that right? In 1981.
Well, I thought I was coming back initially just to run the financial accounting business.
Right.
And when I got back, they said, "No, you're running. Yeah, you're running that, but also you're running the finance industry." But right.
So that's banks and insurance,
City
and stuff like that.
Yeah, not that we had any. I mean, we had nothing for them. But so I started working on a plan for that. But
So what was happening in the industry at that time? I mean, this must have been early 80s.
Yeah.
This was a time of transition, wasn't it?
Was.
In the way that industry was using computers.
Yeah. No, it was, and I don't think any of us really knew what we were doing, to be honest. And it includes the customer, I have to say that.
Yeah.
I remember John Harvey-Jones, or this was a bit later at DEC when he retired, he said that he loved the mini-computer idea.
Yeah.
And of course, DEC invented fax, but also Ethernet to connect. And obviously marketed Ethernet for a long time. The company propaganda was they invented it, but I don't think anyone other than Clarke laboratories actually developed anything. But they there's a new way of doing things, and I remember Harvey-Jones explaining to me his problem at ICI. They'd buy up companies. They buy a lot of companies, and they make a division out of half a dozen of them. And what he would like to do is to reorganise those companies into a different model to the one they've got. He'd like to put all companies that are really about volume and low added value into a group and operate that separately from those where you're almost doing bespoke stuff for the customer.
Yeah.
So, but he's buying companies that do all of that. So he's looking to reorganise to make his business more efficient, and every single one of those damn companies had a mainframe computer that stopped him changing it. And what he wanted to do was to have a series of mini computers in each of those, so that he could pick this bit and that bit and that bit and stick those together.
Right.
And that was his description of mini computers versus mainframes.
All right.
And I think, I got that a bit late in the day, but that was what we were trying to drive.
Yeah.
Was this mini computer revolution, and it was cheaper, but it was the flexibility of it that really was the driving force behind it.
So that must have been a boom time for HP then.
Well, HP got behind. HP got left behind.
But then you moved on to
the people who were leaving them behind. One of the things about marketing is
So how did you come to jump from HP to?
Well, I had HP. We were having issues with HP, HP were having issues. There were two companies in HP. There was the original one, which was all the technical stuff. People who were developing things for the medical profession.
I remember it well.
Yes, all that stuff. And then they tried to then develop this bit I was involved with of the commercial side of things.
Yeah.
And the technical stuff had about 75% market share of their market, and the commercial stuff had about 3%. And HP decided, in their wisdom, they'd been run separately, two country managers.
Yeah.
They decided to merge the two. And I think the problem was that they still weren't getting data out of this one into the other one, and they thought the only way we'll do that is we just have one company, and we run it as one business. And I remember listening to this discussion of the country manager who had just been appointed, who was, of course, the guy with the 75% market share. And they decided that they would give those guys the top job. And I remember, like yesterday, he said, we aren't going to do any of this marketing rubbish, because we don't need to, really. Well, if you've got 75%, maybe you don't. And we're not really going to focus too much on the commercial stuff. And I got the message, well, if you're in marketing and the commercial stuff, this is not the place to be.
So they misread the market.
Totally.
Quite seriously.
Totally. And of course, so I'm thinking, well, there's no future here.
Yeah.
And so I applied to DEC, to go to DEC.
All right, yeah.
Because I thought, this lot don't know what the hell they're doing. There is a story with that. There's a guy called John Young who was the CEO corporate CEO of HP, and apparently the new board went over to Cupertino and he took the new country manager for a walk around the car park to discuss, away from the rest, just going to discuss what's happening in the UK. And some of the guys who were there said they couldn't believe it, but at the far side of the car park, John Young shouted loud enough for them to hear, "No, that's not what I meant." It's too late. Because too many people were bailing out and going to DEC. And DEC had some advantages. HP only had a 16-bit machine. DEC had gone to 32. They looked like they were in the lead. They had Ethernet. They were really at the forefront of it. So it looked to me like DEC were a better bet.
So you made a strategic decision.
I made a decision to go and apply for a job there. And they didn't have a job, but they found one for me.
So this was 1983, and you became European Channels Marketing Manager. So channels. That's was that new style of working in those days?
I don't know. I'd never come across it before, but DEC was selling product through a number of different types of.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And even selling direct was one channel in there.
Yeah.
But they were selling through distributors, and they were selling through added value resellers, and a lot of different ones. And they'd got themselves into an almighty mess. The first job I went there was the CEO there, Jeff Shingle, said to me, "Look, we've got a real problem here. Marketing and sales think they are the competition to each other.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is to get in the middle of that, report directly to me, not them, and try and sort the bloody thing out." So that's the job I joined them for. But I'd been there not a lot of time. There's an internal legal counsel, really smart guy. He was a QC actually, called Peter Bembridge, who came to a board meeting and said, "We have got serious problems here because we are selling products through different channels illegally, if you look at the European Competition Acts." And he'd gone into it in some depth.
Yeah.
And he said, "We have got real problems because we are selling the same product at different prices through different channels. You can't do that. You've got to sort this out." And so they asked me to look at that. So I started looking at it for the UK. Peter was brilliant advice, but he didn't have the time to sort it all out, so I'm going through all this. And I had the project with us, I think there were 3 of us, sorting out what this model should look like. And we presented that to the European board, and they said, Jesus, it's happening everywhere. Can you do this for Europe?
Yeah.
So we did, and then we presented it to the US team who were coming through Heathrow one night, board of deck crew in Ken Olsen, and yes, I don't know.
Your destination is on the right.
Thank you. This is still trying to get me here. Technology for you. So
this was a new way of thinking in terms of how you took your product to market.
Exactly.
Which introduced a whole set of problems.
Huge amount. But nobody thought there were problems until the legal guy said, look, you're breaking the competition law.
Yeah.
And I became an expert in those competition laws for a while, because we were. And we sorted it out. And it was really interesting too. There's some funny things. We did this presentation to the Americans, who took it all back and did the same thing in America, basically. Sorted it out against that. We got a model. And I was trying to describe it, and we were in this Heathrow airport thing. The idea was just 10 minutes, but they had a bit longer while they were, they'd been, I think, to Norway, and they were on the way back to the US, and they had some time at Heathrow. So we went to this hotel, and so I didn't take a presentation or anything, we just talked about it. And I couldn't quite get it across to them, and we were in a room, and there was a whiteboard. So I started, just a green pen, so I started drawing the issues. Selling directly to the customers. These are the indirect channels, and this is what And they took that away with them. We sent them all the stuff anyway, but they took that away with them. And the really funny thing for me was 6 months later, I was in the US at a meeting, a presentation meeting, quite a large group of people, and this guy got up to talk about the channel strategy in the US, and he starts talking about the green zone and the white zone. And the only reason they were green and white is because that's the only coloured pen I had at Heathrow. It's really amazing. And they had a presentation saying, like, this is the green section.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So that was groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, it
so
was.
how did John Harvey Jones come into the picture?
Well, John, as I said, was John had retired as chairman, and we had myself, Peter Brembridge, and one or two others felt that he could advise the company.
And was this at the time you were doing the channel stuff? Or?
Yeah.
So he was involved in all of that.
Yeah, and but we used him for other things too.
Right,
we were sounding him out on anything.
Yeah.
Tremendous influence on me. He would speak at our conferences, sales conferences. And Shingles wasn't impressed, but that's because of Shingles' ego.
Right.
Because he actually said to me, I remember saying, we didn't get John as a non-exec director formally. He was operating like one, but we didn't offer him the job. If we'd done that initially, he would have accepted it. But by the time the egos had gone down a bit, he was busy enough with everything else.
Yeah.
So they missed the opportunity there. And I remember Shingles saying to me, well, what would he bring that I didn't?
Yeah.
And I nearly said to him, just about every bloody thing there is. But anyway.
And was that this understanding of how a business uses computers, or was it a higher level thing about how do you run a business?
It was more around... It was really about how do we pitch what we're doing to a business like this.
Yeah.
So it was very much computing oriented, but strategy not, down at the detail level.
Yeah.
How do you go into a company like ICI and just get in the door?
Yeah.
And what are the things you need to say? What are their issues that what we're doing might be?
So you're at DEC from 83 to 90, and presumably that was the time when everybody had a DEC computer.
Absolutely. Yeah, a VAX. Yeah. Well, by the end they did.
Yeah.
But as so often is the case with these companies, they don't see what's coming.
Yeah.
And the thing that really threw me with DEC, we used to have this annual review of the business, an annual a budget meeting or what have you, and I would attend that. I wasn't actually on the board in that sense, but I was, because my unit was kind of doing something separate, and it was Europe-wide now. But I was always invited to these meetings, and they did this presentation, and I'd done some work myself about the future, just for my own benefit, about where this world was going, and Shingles and the team presented pretty much the same again, and it wasn't going to be like that. So I'd worked out, actually I got this slightly wrong, but I'd worked out that if a company like, and we did some investigation, interestingly, Compaq, we'd done some in-depth look at Compaq, but if a company like Compaq, with their growing capability, hardware capability, teamed up with an operating system like Unix, we actually said Unix because Microsoft wasn't evolving at that stage, then they could probably do what we do at a fraction of the cost. One of the issues for DEC was that they integrated in the pricing an awful lot of consultancy. That was the price you pay. You didn't just pay for it. And the operating system was closed. So you buy a deck, you buy that operating system, they're all the same. You buy that operating system and you buy these apps that go on it. And we dictate the price. So once you've decided on deck, we'll tell you how much you're going to pay. That was really the thing. Now, Compaq and Unix, you're free. And in theory, although there weren't too many apps at the time, you could buy any app to go on that. And I remember working this stuff out with a little team who actually I thought were a very smart group of people. And we went to this board meeting, listened to all this bullshit that Shingles was saying about how we were going to grow by 20% just doing exactly the same. And I said to him, we've done some work, and if Compaq and Unix combine and start taking us on in the marketplace, the end result of that will be that we could afford to employ about 2,000 people in the UK. The problem is we're employing 4,500 now. So it ain't going to work. And Shingles basically said, you don't know what you're talking about. So, and I thought we'd have a go at the Europeans, actually, to see if they'd got. They didn't. They didn't have a picture. A guy called Piercarlo Fillotti was the European chief executive, who to me stood out in memory because at a European sales event, with a couple of thousand people there, he got him and his board to wear white. Where it was a black tie job, to wear white tuxedos. There's 6 of them wearing white tuxedos. And I got this sales guy from Sheffield to go and try and order some beers from him. He didn't know who it was. I said, look, go and ask that Italian waiter. But anyway, I don't think he ever found out it was me that set the guy up to do that. But they just didn't get it. It's one of those things, I think. I remember afterwards after one of these marketing courses, probably Henley, where somebody said to me, who should have been the most successful airline in the world right now? And they said P&O, but they didn't understand the business they were in. They thought they were in the business of shipping, where actually they were in the business of getting people from America to Europe. And if they'd realised there's a different, better way of doing it, and to me the Shingles thing at the time was like that. We do it like this, and it's successful. We've knocked the mainframes on the head. We now are the future. Well, somebody's going to knock you on the head. But I couldn't get that through.
So you took a decision to move on, did you?
Go to Compaq.
And so it sounds like you were pretty successful in growing that business.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't that hard, because, of course, what happened was it wasn't Unix, it was Microsoft. And I did a lot of work with Microsoft. There is John and I there's a guy who was the marketing director of Microsoft, came up with Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
And it was simply a marketing strategy. Because what he said to me was they wanted, these are the sort of things that made all the difference. But they wanted us to preload the applications on our system, Word, Excel.
Yeah. So this was the early 90s when, we all just accept that PCs have
the
Microsoft stuff on these days.
Yeah.
But this was a relatively new idea.
Totally. Then. And I remember having a real battle with John over the amount of RAM you need to run this stuff. Because they were selling all this stuff on 1 meg. It was all run on 1 meg. You know, Windows would run on. Well, Windows would run on 1 meg. Yeah. But if you try to put an application on, it wouldn't. It would stop. So if you actually wanted to do anything, so I was having these media conversations with people saying you need at least 2, and he's getting perplexed. But what we were competing with was Lotus Smart Suite.
Yeah.
Which was a similar set of applications.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same. Similar set, but they'd packaged it very neatly into Smart Suite. You buy Smart Suite at a price, you get all of it.
Yeah.
And we said we need to do the same. If you want us to preload, we had a relationship with Lotus, and we were preloading Smart Suite. And they were saying, what do we do to get you to kick that out and put ours on? And we said, well, first it's the price of the damn thing, because we don't want to be paying a lot for it. And secondly, it's got to be more integrated. And so eventually we came up with this idea of Microsoft Office, which had Word, Excel. I don't think it had PowerPoint to start with, but Word and Excel at least. And we called it Office. They didn't talk to each other. You couldn't get a spreadsheet into Word. I mean, that was way off. Yeah. But you could buy it as a package.
Yes.
And so we started installing that, and that was a significant part of why we grew.
Yeah.
But also we came up with a really good, maybe this is the background I had before, but we came up with, I thought, a fantastic marketing strategy, channel strategy. It was all indirect channels, our business at Compaq. We came to the conclusion that the reseller channel, PC reseller, was actually not being looked after properly, and they were pissed off with IBM, who were selling direct against them, and Apple were as well. And basically, what we got, these resellers together, and they'd all come out of being IBM typewriter companies. And they developed into PCs, and we got them and said, look, we will guarantee we will not sell direct. We get an order, we'll give it to you. But we need a commitment from you. And then I came up with something called Sales Pack, which was that the discount, they got so much discount, and we'd got an extra couple of percent that we held back. We said we're going to hold that back, and we'll do joint marketing with that fund. And so if you want to, we'll do something together. Yeah. And there's some really entertaining stuff on that, because I just have to approve it. And Computer Center were the biggest by far. They got very successful at this. Yeah. But the combination of a whole raft of things. We also had a good machine. I mean, all it was a reverse engineered IBM. Yeah. They just took it apart, put it back together again.
But this was the period of the rise of the PC.
It was indeed,
and the Microsoft.
Absolutely, and we were right in the middle of that.
Yeah,
and went from I remember a guy coming from Houston, Compaq, saying, our goal this year is going to be to go from number 4 in the market to number 3.
Yeah,
and I said, well, where's the time?
Yeah,
What's the that? Yeah. What's the point of that? Well, don't you think we should go for number 3? No. So you go for number 1.
Yeah.
If you go for number 1, you will do a whole series of different things than if you were going to be third. Yeah. You just do different things. If you don't want to go for number 1, you don't try and do that, you don't have a plan for it, you just simply won't get there. So you have to go from it, and we managed to do that,
did it.
fortunately. Yeah.
This was the time when client server was the fashion, wasn't it?
was.
When your
Yeah.
consultants were writing papers about how you should switch to client server.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And presume that's part of the success of.
Yeah, it was.
company.
I think part of our success too was that the resellers were gaining in capability the whole time. They were seeing themselves as the service provider you add to this core stuff. And we were signing up all the big and best service providers.
Right. Yes.
So the client server thing was,
Yeah.
we were fueling it
Yeah.
and supporting it.
Yeah.
But we weren't actually providing the services ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that was a nice clean cut. So we weren't competing with the guys selling our kit, whereas IBM were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all of this, the internet was well, not the internet was invented long before, but the
Indeed.
World Wide Web started to rise, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Yeah.
So the next move was to an internet company
Yeah.
in '96 or
96,
whatever.
yeah. I think, that was more a personal thing than for the first time, really. I moved there for personal reasons rather than strategy. I'd been at Compaq as number 2 for quite a while in the UK. I mean, I'd had a European level job doing European level work, but I wanted to be a CEO. And Joe McNally was the CEO, and Joe and I got on really well, because as it turned out, what he liked and what he did were totally opposite to what I liked and what I did. And we very early on carved the thing up, and business plans. He had no idea what one was, so I would do that kind of thing. I would do all the marketing. He wouldn't get involved in that. He'd have the relationships with the salespeople. He was very much a sales manager, really. So the sales team he would be actively involved in and going out and wining and dining the directors of computer centre and all this stuff. He loved that. Doing deals with them all. So it all kind of fitted. But I wanted to be CEO. And the problem was that Joe really, right from day one, saw his main competition as being Compaq France, followed shortly by Compaq Germany. And as long as he was number 1 in Europe, he could do pretty much what he wanted. But he was quite aggressive about that. He made Margaret Thatcher look European, really. He's a bit of a Farage type character. European meetings I've been to, embarrassed. Well, it didn't really matter, because he so what? And his view was, as long as I keep doing the numbers thing, they'll keep away from me, which is true, actually.
Yeah.
But then the European, what happened then is that the Rod, whatever the guy was, is a corporate president of Compaq, fell out with the board over something. I'm not quite sure exactly what now. And they looked around and they appointed the European president as the corporate president. So European job's up. So Joe, of course, thinks he's an absolute rock solid shoo-in.
Yeah.
We all did. They gave it to the German guy. Not only did that piss him off big time, but the guy called Eckhard Pfeiffer was the president, the European president. And he came over. We had breakfast, because I said to him, I've got some concerns about that. I'd done a lot of work directly with Eckhard. He came over on one trip and he said, let's have breakfast Heathrow and talk through all this. And basically his bottom line was, if you were in my position, would you get Joe McNally to run Europe? And I said, no. The truth is, no, he's just made too many enemies. I mean, they would compete. We had some great sales schemes. We had one where if you were sold the most stuff in a year, you'd get a free trip to Houston, with all expenses paid, and some fun nights out and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So the French bought a Ferrari, and whichever French salesman sold the most that month would get the use of the Ferrari for a month. I mean, it was all this sort of competitive stuff. But Joe was quite aggressive to the individuals. And there's no way the French or German country manager would work for him. He just ruined that. And didn't think about that at all. So now he was really pissed off that he hadn't got that job. But the problem for me was that was the ceiling then. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go anywhere. He won't get paid the sort of package he's got at Compaq with significant share options and stuff. There's no way he'd get another package anywhere else. He's going to do this job till he drops. So what am I going to do? Because I can't go anywhere. So I started to fish around, and I think I got headhunted for Netcom, but it's one of those things where I started putting around I would be interested in doing something else. And so the appeal for Netcom for me was CEO, startup, basically the headquarters is in San Jose, but they leave you alone.
But an interesting thing looking back on this, I think, as I said earlier on, your career seems to mirror the developments of the industry.
Yeah.
You're moving out of the hardware and software and into the online world of services and media and information.
That's true. All I would say is that at the time I moved, I didn't see it that clearly, to be honest. I had the others. I'd seen where it was going. This just looked like a potentially interesting area, rather than this is going to be the big future. Yeah. And I think that's where we were in '96.
Yeah. I mean, again, one of the things that comes out of some of the interviews for AIT is the convergence of the telecoms industry and the IT industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many people, looking back, say that was completely obvious as a strategic move, but not everybody realised it was happening at the time.
Not in '96. I think it was not far after that. But at Netcom, we put together the product for the customer. But we were the first consumer-based internet provider. And we built a product called Net Complete. I remember we marketed this as being everything you need to get on the internet. And Dixon's rang me up and said, "You have a real problem with this." Well, this woman's brought it back, and she said, "Apparently you need a computer to run it on." Oh, great. So we were targeting, really, for the first time, the consumer. And built that thing which made it a lot easier to get on, and had to have support. 24-hour support, really. We had some guys doing nighttime call handling in the premises. We were in Bracknell to support those customers. But it was the first consumer-based one, and we learnt a lot. But if I look at the telecom side of it, we had to buy capability from the telephone company. We had to buy time. I mean, they weren't paying us.
Yeah.
Which is where it ended up.
Yes.
We were paying them to provide us with the capability.
Yes.
So we just saw them as another supplier, really, at that time. In '96, we just saw them as another supplier. I mean, it changed fairly quickly after that, but not straight away.
So you clearly made an impact, because you were then approached to take on a bigger.
Netcom.
This was '97.
Yeah. Netcom were having problems. I mean, I set off with this. I was going to board meetings on a monthly basis to San Francisco. I'd do a day trip every month to San Francisco. And but the company, the guy running it, a guy called David Garrison, and his team, I think Netcom evolved, and they suddenly got big ideas. They evolved. They were initially suppliers of internet capability to students in the Bay Area. That's what they did. Yeah. Then they decided to widen it out to a wider group than just students, and as the numbers grew and they got more aggressive, they thought that they could widen this out internationally, and they started a subsidiary in Canada, and then they were going to fund one in the UK. But they were not geared to do anything like that. And basically, the funds that they told me would be available for the UK subsidiary, when I got into the job after working a notice period with Compact, I found somebody told me they'd all been spent. But what have they spent it on? What have they done? Nobody could see what they'd done. But there's no money left. And they started, I think they overextended, and they didn't have any money, and there's nothing really we could do to develop it. Now, what we did do was do it on a smaller scale and provide internet capability to businesses. And that was quite successful. That ran for a number of years, providing internet capacity to businesses. But the consumer market wasn't going to be funded without getting the message across. You had to spend some money to get the message out. So I'm starting to have doubts about this bunch. And then got approached by Bearded Wonder as a result of what we'd done on Netcom. Because what we'd done, it was interesting, we won something called ISP of the Year. Now, I think we were the only ISP anyway that year, but nevertheless we won the award in some of the magazines for ISP of the Year. So I get approached by Virgin, typically.
So just to kind of remind us,
yeah,
this is 1996-97.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to remember, what was the state of the internet and the technology in those days. Clearly, it didn't have a very high penetration into households.
Well, that's because to be honest, at Netcom, I used to say to people, you can use this system if you've got a PhD in Boolean technology.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, you'll never find anything.
Yeah.
And it's growing. There are user groups were starting to form where you could access them. And you could get access to some sites, but you probably needed to know the ID of the site, the name of the site. There was no real search capability. You needed to really know where you were. So groups of people were starting to advise each other about this stuff.
Right.
But it wasn't really easy to find.
Yeah. So did Virgin have a more friendly approach, a more easy to use system?
Well, we went. I remember talking to the Bearded Wonder about it all, and clearly he was a technophobe. He had no idea. He said, we worked in his. He worked in the house. He bought a house on Holland Park that he worked in, and then as Virgin grew bigger and bigger, he bought the one next door to live in, and so this was his bedroom at one stage, and all the files are in a wardrobe and stuff like that. But on a dressing table at the side was an old computer, was a compact computer, a new one. And I said, one of my old machines there, and he said, do you know how to switch it on? I said, yeah. He said, go on. He said, that's the first time that's been on. I said, I can tell because you've got no mouse and no keyboard. There's a big bugger all with it, actually. But he's a complete technophobe, was Brunson. There's a lot of benefits of working with him, but there's some other interesting stuff too. But they had no idea. But he felt that, I think he'd been advised by his brother-in-law that this was an area that was coming, and it was going to affect all their businesses. Somebody in Virgin had said, this sort of stuff we're going to need. We're going to need it in the airline business. We're going to need it in the records business. This is coming.
Yeah.
And we better try and develop something. So I went into... they've got a few techies, mad as bloody hatters they were, but very technically competent people. Virgin had just launched Coca-Cola, Virgin Cola, and they'd got a a freebie of one of those dispensing machines. But by I got there, it was full of Red Bull. They never put any cola in it at all. It's all Red Bull, and they were all absolutely off their heads by about 2:00. And but most of the good work was done after that. So we developed, and they were looking for, how can we find search? How can we find something that fits this problem?
Yeah.
And a couple of guys went over to the US, and they came back and said, "We've got it. We've found something that does this." And I said, "What's that?" They said, "Google. We found
Google.
Never heard of in the UK,
Wow.
but there's a research engine here that actually does what the consumer wants, and it's called Google." And he said, "Can we get hold of it?" Yeah, they'll supply us.
So just to reiterate, this is 1997 when Google makes its
Might be
first.
98,
Yeah.
but it was certainly in that early stage of Virgin where we got a deal with Google to use their search engine. It wasn't an exclusive; they wouldn't do exclusive, but we were out first with that, and they would work with Google, with Virgin. Everybody would work. The one advantage you have with Virgin is everybody wants to work with it.
Yeah.
It's never an issue.
Yeah.
Price of the deal might be, but everybody wants to work with Virgin, and they know who you are.
So
Yeah.
just looking at your statistics that you briefed me with, when you left Netcom in '97, they were number one
ISP.
with 17,000 customers.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, Virgin seemed to have 500,000
Yeah.
customers.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that is a steep growth curve.
It is, although FreeServe had 2 million.
Did they? All right. Okay. So
What did people do with it?
Yeah.
But it was a very, very steep curve.
yeah, and was FreeServe the leader
Yeah.
at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And they came up with this deal, and this is really where for the first time, the role of the telecom company in this business changed, because they had a guy in Leeds running this who worked out actually that the telco were making a lot of money. We were paying them,
Yeah.
and they're making a lot of money out of the customer. We should have a deal where we get this for free.
Yeah.
We get the telephony for free. They can make the money on the consumers using it,
Yeah.
and we get the service capability for free. That allows us then to offer the service free,
Yeah.
which is what they did. And we're still paying Cable and Wireless to supply us. They got us the service free. I don't know who it was from. It's probably, I think it might have been France Telecom, but they got the access free.
So what was your role in all of this change in the way the industry was working at that time? Then were you marketing? Or,
Yes, mostly.
yeah.
I mean, I had to manage the company,
Yeah.
and there were a real bunch of. These are people Virgin had
Yes.
recruited,
Yes.
and they were such a strange bunch. They were recruited because of their technical capability, and they were technically brilliant, but they were mad as hatters. Many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the first day I got there, I walked into the gents there, because Virgin, strange company, they would move offices all the time because they were buying up cheap end of lease somewhere in London. They'd move. Anything that was cheap, they were really looking for the cheapest of everything. Very parsimonious company. And I walked into this office on Soho Square, and into the gents on the way in. There's this guy there with he put some paper towels in the sink thing to block it, run somewhere, and he's getting shaved in there. And I said, "You all right?" Yeah, good. And he said, "Yeah, I thought I'd better smarten up because apparently we've got a new CEO starting today." I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, you look like you've been working." Yeah, he says, "I've been here all night," and a number of them would work through the night on something because they were into it. and then they'd go home at 10 o'clock in the morning or something. It was really a strange mix. The three managers of content, technology, and marketing had fallen out to such a degree before I got there that they'd built a Branson's brother-in-law was trying to run it, but he hadn't got a clue. But built what was basically a sort of King Arthur table, a round table with three chunks, so that these three would sit and work together. But no sooner had it left than the three musketeers themselves put three boards up so they couldn't see each other, which defeats the whole bloody object of it. And they were really kind of at war with each other most of the time. So it's actually getting something done that you could use really was the first thing. And then once we had it, then it's marketing it. But it was just getting a group of people to work together really.
But it sounds like the industry was moving, or Virgin was moving very quickly, and you were also involved in the Virgin mobile business.
Yeah, up to some degree, although I was more involved with... we provided the knowledge for the Virgin companies to get into the internet.
Yeah,
my group did.
Yeah.
So we developed the first Atlantic system.
Yeah.
Virgin Atlantic system. We developed something for the retail side. We were developing an online ordering system. Well, we developed an online ordering system.
So this was a capability for the whole of the Virgin group.
Yeah. And often it was for the group, although it was often a specific request for somebody by one of the businesses. Yeah. So they wouldn't take on their own people. There weren't people to take on. They'd ask us to do that. So my team were not just doing the ISP side of it. We were doing that, and we were trying to add reasonable content into the business for people to see when you go in the system, not just have to go to a website to get it, but get something reasonable on the site, on our site, and of course then tie into Virgin. There would be there was a home page, and all the other Virgin sites were on the front page to try and promote the Virgin business as well, and then Google if you wanted to go somewhere else. So that was really the drive for what the team were doing.
And everything at Virgin is for sale?
Always. No question.
And they made a lot of money out of selling it?
Yeah. The thing is that I didn't know that when I joined. Everything was for sale always. But a friend of mine, a guy I got to know really well, who was running the radio, Virgin Radio, David Cameron, different David Cameron, came to me one day and he said, because we were sharing offices, he was actually using some of our office space in Soho Square, and he said, well, I'm off. I said, are you? He said, yeah. I've got to decide what I'm going to do now, but we sold Virgin Radio. He said, I've been offered the job of going with it, but I'm not sure I want to, because they'd sold it to Ginger Mop, Chris, whatever his name is. They didn't want to work for him. He said, on the other hand, I have worked for the guy with the biggest ego in history already, so maybe another one isn't a big problem, but David didn't go with that. He went somewhere else. But when I joined Virgin, I wasn't there that long. When I joined Virgin, there were 235 Virgin companies. About half of them with the brand Virgin, and half of them not. If Virgin owned 51% or more, it would be Virgin brand. Yeah. And if it was less than that, it would be some other brand. Yeah. All sorts of companies that didn't carry the Virgin brand. But everything was for sale, and so you never really knew where you were. And it also would be sold, the thing that really annoyed me, from under you.
Yeah.
So, there's me trying to build something long term for the company. Yeah. For Virgin's benefit, and the next thing you know, it's sold.
Yeah.
Branson they say, oh, I'm doing other jobs, but that wasn't the point really.
So that's why you moved to Trinity Mirror.
Yeah. Well, they'd been talking to me for a while anyway.
Yeah.
When they saw what we were doing, it actually was at that stage. It was the Mirror Group.
Yeah.
Trinity hadn't come in. It was so-called merger of Trinity and Mirror, but actually, Trinity were the largest. The owners still are, I think, of the largest number of regional newspapers. That's what they were.
Yeah. They
buy up all these family businesses. They had regional newspapers, really. And of course, Mirror was the national newspaper. And they had the chairman who was chairman of both, Victor Planck. He decided he could make some money out of pulling it all together. But there was a director at Mirror who really understood the internet, a guy called Cornell Whitman, an American guy. He was very good friends with Meg Whitman, who was at that stage CEO of eBay, and we even looked at bringing eBay, version of eBay here, branding under the Mirror. I mean, Cornell was really well connected, but in the merger of Trinity and Mirror, and someone said to me, "What's the difference between a merger and a takeover?" And it's about 6 weeks, basically. And the top jobs all went to the Trinity people, who did not get internet at all. They had a board who were all retirement, and they just didn't get it. So before long, Cornell had left, and really I went there because of him. I mean, I went there to work for him, and I took a chunk of the Virgin team with me, as well, and we had a great setup there. The biggest mistake I think that Trinity Mirror ever made was not pursuing what we did with the media stuff, because we had something special.
Yeah.
Way in front of anyone else. At this stage, for example, there was no internet betting, but we'd come up with a proposal for internet betting.
Yeah.
Branded Racing Post, because we owned Racing Post.
So this was circa 2000.
Yeah. 99 to 2000.
So this was the start. Well, that's another milestone in the use of the internet.
Absolutely.
Those leisure activities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a shopping system, which was a huge number of different products you could buy. We had a sports channel, sports bits. We had all based, and of course, for us, it was easy that all the content was already being produced by the newspapers.
So you were right at the front of the.
We should have been, but the board wouldn't back the plan. And I wrote this book about that. And what they did was, we needed some investment to get it to market.
Yeah.
And these were newspaper people who didn't believe, I have to say, didn't get the internet at all.
Yeah.
The board were just newspaper people, and they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
So when we're talking to them about this, there's just no awareness of what's coming, and they were really difficult discussions. So then they put their advisors to look at it, and they spent about a month going through all the details of what we were asking for and what we should do.
Yeah.
And they then made a presentation to the board, because we needed to get on and do this. This wasn't something you could wait 6 months for. And they made this presentation, which I thought started really quite well. And then there were competition for investment. The Mirror, Pierce Morgan, was pushing for more money to be invested in the Mirror. But it was ridiculous, because I had a deal lined up to sell the ISP without the content, just a technical ISP, which had a lot of users, and the telcos were looking to buy, and I had Deutsche Telekom lined up, and they made an indicative offer on the numbers we gave them of about £1 million.
Yeah.
We were looking for £500,000 to develop our business, and I said, "Well, we can give you £500,000 for his bloody newspaper if it'll shut him up, and we can develop all this content and make it available on all the sites." And they didn't quite get this. You could do that, make it available if you didn't have the ISP. But in any case, this organisation came up with this presentation, and basically what they said was, this is not the time, we need to wait. And the last line, which was the title of my book, was, the market is moving in our direction. Now, this was March 2000. In June 2000 it blew up. The market blew up completely when AOL were finally found out. Because basically the way AOL were working was that they were amortizing the cost of acquiring customers over 5 years. They said customers stay with us for 5 years.
Yeah.
So we'll amortize the cost of acquiring them over 5 years.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep growing, you never have to fund that.
Yeah.
But they stopped growing, the numbers. So now the money's not coming in. And so now the authorities and the accounting authorities auditing are saying, we need to look at this again. And what they came to the conclusion is that after 5 years, AOL had shown a series of profits because of that accounting method. Over 5 years, they came to the conclusion they'd actually made a loss over those 5 years. They'd never actually made anything. And it was all down to that accounting. And that blew the bubble completely. The other thing was that most income from internet companies in the US, large internet companies from the US, was coming from other internet companies in the US. So they were. It was just a myth. They were they were putting a number of shares available into the market. Consumers would buy it. They'd give them a load of money, and they'd spend it with another internet company for something. And they were all doing that with each other. Consumers weren't actually buying anything, and all that combined to blow up in 2000, June 2000.
And then you ended up having to dismantle all of that by the sound of it, and move on to something completely different.
Yeah, totally different. Yeah, well, I mean, they owed me quite a bit of money at Trinity Mirror. I had a contract, and which they honoured. They paid it up. I had a 12-month contract, which they paid, and some stock option, whatever. They paid what they should pay, and that gave me some time to reflect. I didn't have to go out and find another job the next day. So I just relaxed for a bit, started trying to write the book, and I did write it, although I found it very hard to do, I have to say, really hard process of sitting tucked away in the room doing it yourself. And I doing it again, I do it a different way. But
it's published, is it?
No. The reason it isn't is because I asked once I finished it, I asked a couple of people to read it. And then I reread it myself. Yeah. And they said basically, well, it's all right as long as you don't think Branson's lawyers will have a go at you about this, that, or the other.
It's the trouble with the interesting books.
It would, but I said, well, I tell you what, he'd be less impressed if I hadn't put him in. For sure. But I felt myself that it was too negative. It felt somehow just the whole thing in the style that it was just one long whinge. Yeah. And I thought the content is right, but the style was too negative. And so I need to rewrite it. And I never got the time to redo it. Yeah. So it's still sitting on my computer.
Because you ended up at the BCS.
And I ended up at BCS, yeah. Although there was some time, because I was approached about that job. I don't know where that came from. I certainly didn't apply because I had been once to the BCS. All
right, so the BCS came to you.
I think an agent in the middle did. And I went to meet with, it certainly wasn't something I had, I was looking to do. Yeah. And we'd done a presentation when I was at Compaq, at the old London headquarters, to a bunch of old fogies, sat around a table, and we were telling them what a PC was. And I remember at the end of it, we took a laptop there and demonstrated it and showed them. And I remember them saying, "Oh, it's very interesting," but we'll never catch on, of course. Oh, right. Well, so that's that lot. And I met Jeff McMullen.
Yes.
And David Morris.
Yeah.
And Mike in Sheffield, treasurer. 3 of them, anyway. And they impressed me. And they had a little board, and they had a guy who was at GCHQ, but he was at the time chairman of the young YPG, and he was clearly switched on. And they were basically. I did some research, and in fact, I did a lot of research with all. When I thought it was potential, I did a lot of research initially before the interview, and then later when I got the job, a lot more about BCS. And because I had no idea what I was going to do next, just no idea. And it seemed to me that there was something needed, and BCS maybe could be the people to do it. But there was no real sign of it happening. So they offered me the job. I think it was a split decision. They had somebody else in mind. Jeff said afterwards, that after his some time afterwards, I have to say, that after his daughter's wedding, it was the proudest thing he'd ever done. And I said, "Oh, I'll soon change that for you." But Jeff was president when I took over. David. Oh no, Jeff was president. What do they call? Alistair. Alistair was president for a couple of months, and then Jeff for the whole year. And then
Alistair
MacDonald.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He chaired that farewell meeting, which is why he chaired it. What a character he is. But he only really did his year and went. Didn't really hang around afterwards. David Morris, of course, did. And we developed some. And what Jeff said to me is, "Look, we need you to commit to 5 years, because we can't be changing." The predecessor really hadn't done much. And Judith Scott. and we need a shake-up. We need something doing.
Was he specific about what needed shaking up?
No.
But there was a 5-year project there.
He said, "Look, we'll work it out." And I spent a lot of time with Jeff, working through a lot of things. And I think we had a very similar feel for what needed to be done. So there we were. Took it on. There was a 6-month wait because they'd found somebody quicker, because I was going to do it quicker than they expected to. And Judith was on 6 months' notice.
Yeah. So you shared the job with them.
I didn't start.
Oh, you waited to start.
And because I was getting paid by Trinity Mirror, I could afford to do that.
Yeah.
So I got appointed on Christmas Eve and didn't start until May the 1st.
Right. So what was your assessment of what had to be done in this 5-year project?
Well, the first thing I did was I didn't know much about BCS, apart from my one experience. So I went to a lot of people in the IT industry that I knew, friends and what have you, people who were working in IT for the companies that I'd worked in, Virgin, Trinity Mirror. They had some really top people running the IT departments of those companies. So, users of IT, and I said to all of them, "What do you think of the BCS?" And there was a sort of split response. It wasn't exactly 50-50, but it was near enough 50-50, where half of them said they'd never heard of BCS.
Yeah.
And the other half said, "Oh yeah, we've heard of them, but that's not for us. Irrelevant." The word irrelevant kept coming back.
Sorry, the people you talked to, you found from where?
Contacts.
Right.
People I knew.
Not just members.
No, they weren't members.
But people in the industry.
They weren't members. I mean, by definition, they weren't members.
Yeah.
And, so would you join BCS? Never heard of them. Who's that?
Yeah.
Or if you, it's not for me. I mean, I know they've got this sort of academic rubbish or something. And there's nothing there for me. And these are people like, the IT director of Trinity Mirror.
Yeah.
A lot of the techie people I had in Virgin.
Yeah.
That I was still in contact with. Even going back to some of the previous lists on our list.
Yeah.
What do you think? And it was, I have to say, having accepted the job, it was disappointing that there was no awareness in the profession of BCS. It was at the same level as mine, really. I didn't have any. If we hadn't been invited at Compact to go and do that presentation, I would never have heard of BCS.
And yet you have quite a few thousand members.
37.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who were they?
Yeah.
I don't know. 5,000 academics, which was not a market I was tapping into.
Yeah.
But so I thought, this is not. When you think of the number of people working in this profession, different estimates, but it's around 1.5 million at the time, and there's 37,000 members, of which quite a few of those are students. And what I found later was there was a nice little scheme about that. That if you were an international student and you wanted to take the BCS exams, and the BCS exams were in some countries, Mauritius and in particular Mauritius and Sri Lanka to some degree, they didn't have their own IT exams. They didn't have national exams. BCS was it.
Yeah.
That we had this scheme managed by the British Council, I think, that if you took our exam and took out membership, it was cheaper than just taking the exam.
Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, we had a lot of international student members. They also all thought if they did that and got a job and passed the exam and were a student member of the BCS, that they would automatically get a job in the UK. It would give them entry into the UK. All very disappointing for them. But so there was about, there's several thousand student members in that 37. And it had not gone up. It had not really changed for about 5 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely static. And yet the number of people working in the profession had doubled in that time. So if you look at it, I remember saying this in the interview, if you look at market share, because they're all, our membership's staying. I said, well, actually, if you look at it in market share terms, it's hard.
Yeah.
You're not making any progress at all. And they didn't really know what to do about it. And I said, it'll last for a while, but if you don't keep it filling the pipe up, it will disappear.
So you found yourself sitting in the CEO's chair at BCS.
I did.
And did the people who appointed you have a vision of what they wanted you to do?
None whatsoever.
So it was your job to create
Find
vision.
one. Yeah. They didn't even have a vision for BCS. You couldn't find anything like that. 5 years' time, where do you see BCS? Nobody had that picture. Nobody had even done the work for it. I mean, it's not our responsibility almost. The board certainly didn't. Big problem with the board, though, in my view, in BCS, is that it changes so often. Because of the election process, an annual thing, a lot of people are only on the board a year, trustees for a year or so, and that doesn't give any consistency at all to things like where shall we take it.
Yeah.
Key people behind certain things disappear in no time.
Yeah.
And they're starting again all the time, starting again. And that's one of the things I found, is that you couldn't actually leave those things to the trustee board.
Do you think you should be able to leave those things to the trustee board?
No.
Do you think it should be the chief executive?
I think the trustee board should approve it, should know of it, and support it. Don't think they can do the work on it.
Yeah.
And they can have a view. But there's some other elements to that as well, because BCS is not one set of people. There are a number of different groups who are very, very different to each other. I mean, it took nearly 5 years to come together in the 50s because they couldn't get the academics and the commercial people to actually agree on anything.
Yeah.
There were two separate organisations. And when they did merge, they didn't really, they're still separate. And they have very, very different requirements. And to try and keep everybody satisfied well, you'll never do that. In fact, you'll never keep anybody satisfied. But that's all right, because it is that much of a mix. And in some of the things, it makes real sense to try and pull those different things together to do certain things. And in fact, BCS is unique in being able to do that, has the ability to do that, if it only focused on doing that sort of stuff properly. But there's some real different cliques in BCS, specialist groups, real cliques, and with their own agenda, entirely their own agenda. It's nothing to do with BCS agenda. You've got to ask some of the specialist groups about the BCS agenda then. Our agenda is this. Stuff BCS basically.
So do you feel you got to a position, having come into the job, that working with the trustee board and with your staff, that you created a vision that you could drive through and
yes,
use to change the organisation?
Particularly earlier on. And I have to say, and this will not necessarily go down particularly well, but I have to say the quality of the people I was working with, the volunteers, early on, was of high quality, really high quality, and high commitment to BCS. And I can't say too much in praise of Jeff McMullen, David Morris, people like this. They really believed that we could achieve something here, and it was a win.
Yeah.
And they would give all the support you ever wanted. And it became much more watered down later.
Right. But it sounds like it got off to a good start.
It was a good start, and got better. And got better.
Did you achieve the objectives that?
I don't know where we are now. We achieved a lot of the objectives.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is that BCS's financial model was a complete mess. There wasn't any money to do anything.
Right.
And we had to do something to fix that. There's only a certain amount you can do on membership, although we doubled the membership numbers. Yeah. But there's a cost in acquiring members as well. So the net profit on those numbers, to feed, so if you go to say 75,000 members, you've got to recruit 1,000 members a month just to keep that at 75,000.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of investment of various kinds to keep that level. And then, of course, it's a lot harder to manage that number. Yeah. But what we decided was that we've got to have a commercial, a real focus on the commercial side of BCS to drive some money to fund the rest.
Yeah.
And that was the examinations business.
Yeah. That was developed under your regime.
Indeed. Yeah. They had already acquired ECDL, but it wasn't turning in the sort of numbers that it could. And Pete, I'll think of his name, it was already, it just started actually, who ran ECDL for us. We recruited him in from the college market. He actually was at Swindon College, a lecturer in IT. And we recruited him in because we thought this is the way. And Pete knew the thing backwards, that the only way I didn't know, but the only way to get on the curriculum for next year is to get approval of government funding into those organisations, because they get about 50% subsidy.
Yeah.
And if it's approved, and if it isn't approved, they don't get that. They won't put it in their curriculum. You can forget it. So we did a lot of work around working out how you do that, who were the qualifications board to do that, and what do you need. And every year we worked really hard at getting that qualification. You had to have the right product. It had to be up to date, which took investment. You had to be prepared every year to invest in those products so they stay up to date. But we did all that year after year.
Yeah.
And you could stop at any time and have a cash flow, but it wouldn't last long.
So you were pleased with the way
that one,
the society developed?
Yeah. And then we went into the more professional exams, because ECTL really is a user environment. So the ISEP.
Yeah.
And we developed a whole raft of new capability there, new areas where we would certify people.
So how would you characterise the change from when you joined the BCS to, I don't know, when you left the BCS? That's the simplest thing, isn't it?
Well, I think, the first thing is we had a lot more members.
Yeah.
And that does a lot for you.
Yeah.
Having a lot more members per se doesn't do a huge amount, but governments start to think you're big enough to take notice of.
Yeah.
You say you've got 75,000 members,
Yeah.
quite a number of government ministers and whatever, you think you're actually a trade union.
Yes.
But, there's a negativity about the Conservative Party of that. But they think they're going to have to listen to you because you've got all these people. You get asked to do things.
Yeah.
And we changed totally our whole approach to how we respond to requests for information. The classic for me about how you do things differently, how we had to do things differently, is the first week I was there, I think it was about the second day, I was in the office and I got a call from the Financial Times. And they had some issue going on in the market around IT security.
Yeah.
And they were trying to get an answer.
Yeah.
As, is this serious? What do you do about it? So they rang us. And I said, Colin Thompson was, I remember in my office, I talked to the guys at the FT and I said, right, well, we'll come back to it. And I said to Colin, what they just said, and he said, what do we do? He said, we've got a specialist group for that. We've got a specialist group for everything. Yeah. Here's the list.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get them on to that.
Yeah.
So he rang him, chairman of said specialist group, and told them the whole story, and that the AFT are on, and we can get ourselves here, prominent position, in tomorrow's FT. And the guy said, going to need the questions in writing. Oh, you're joking? No, we've got to be right. And I anyway would have to consult my committee, and so if you can get me them in writing, I'll send them out. So we went back to the FT, got the questions in writing. They were quite bemused by that, because they weren't that desperately difficult.
They just wanted to talk to somebody.
Yeah. They just wanted somebody to say something, anything. So we got the questions, and we sent them out to this chairman. And every day then, for a week, I'm ringing him up asking what the answer is. Oh, Joe hasn't come back. We haven't been able to. And anyway, eventually, after a week, he said, you'll be pleased to know we have come to a conclusion on these questions. Great. What is it? We're not prepared to answer them. Anyway, as it turns out, it was far too late for the FT anyway. Yeah. But it said to me, we can't do that. Yeah. We simply can't do that anymore. What we have to do is to find people, and then the other piece of that, somebody said to me, if you get 50 people in a room, 50 BCS people in a room, and ask them a question, you'll get about 65 answers. So there's no consensus anywhere on anything. So I said to Colin, look, we need a list here of experts that we trust. And all right, they'll piss off some of our members. Sorry about that. Quote. But at least we'll get an answer out. At least people will start to see us as being relevant. Yeah. And relevant is the thing we had to become. So let's get a list of experts in various fields, and at least if we get a question on that, we can ring them. And we'll just take their view.
Yeah.
And all right, other people won't be happy with it, but that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So we built up our own internal list. These weren't staff members; these were volunteers, but expert in the field. But everyone's an expert at BCS. But what we were able to do was to build through that a presence. People would ring us and know they'd get an answer.
Yeah.
Government departments would ask us, and we could send some people over and talk to them. So we were starting to be responsive to really important areas. Yeah. So we became relevant. Yeah. Which was actually, to me, the whole thing. Is BCS relevant? It wasn't when I went in. Yeah. I think when I left, I think it was.
Right. So that's...
So that main one, it was solvent.
Yeah.
It was financially solvent.
And relevant.
And the biggest relevant thing of all was the professionalism in IT program.
Yeah.
because I think that was hugely important. So many good people got involved in that.
Yeah.
Mostly down to Charles Hughes recruiting them, I have to say.
Yeah.
But the idea sparked actually from an idea from Colin and I about a month into me being in the job. Went up to Nottingham to talk to IBM's consultants. They have some educational centre in Nottingham, and we went there and talking through, and we're all sort of agreeing on the issues of IT. You know, people think it's a cowboy industry. They don't trust anybody, all that sort of stuff, which is what was being reported all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, why would people join this profession?
Yes.
And the thing is, it's got to be a profession. We have to make it into a real profession. So, and I remember and making this pitch and saying that's what we have to do. And with this guy, there were only about 5 members. There must have been about 400 people in the audience, and I said, "How many of you are BCS members?" This is classic. About 5. Put their hands up. And I said, "We've got to do something about this." And this guy put his hand up, and he said, "What are you doing about it?" Good question. So on the train back, I said to Colin, "We've got to do something about this. It's down to us to do something."
Yeah.
And I think he was closer to Charles than me. He had done had a word with Charles, and we started to build this group.
Yeah.
Which, as I say, Charles drove. Got some really good people, and I think a lot of good things came out of that.
Yeah.
And we started, I think, through that to look like a profession.
Yeah. Along the way, you had a bit of resistance to some of these changes from the members, didn't you? What do you put that down to?
If there's one thing I'd have done differently, it's the transformation program.
Yeah. This is what triggered the EGM experience.
All of it. And I think it was... The reality, though, is it was an excuse for some people that they used for long-term issues they'd had.
Right.
They actually couldn't care less about it, but it was something that they could use. But when I look at it, we didn't manage it very well in terms of managing it with the members. I thought we had, but we hadn't. And we'd gone to a number of groups, focus groups on it, a number of groups of people, about what we wanted to do, and on all of them we got a positive response. But when you look at it, it was a small fraction of the membership we got to.
Yeah.
And I think we assumed, well, if that lot think it's good, then everybody does.
Yeah.
And that clearly wasn't the case, and we should have done a lot more work on that. We also should have done it differently, because there was this conflict of Ian Ryder using his previous company to do some work. That was so... I was reluctant to do that, but they were cheap, they were good quality, they were ready to go. And I said to Bob Harvey, who was president, look, I think we need an independent look at that, an independent audit on it, because this could come back to haunt us. And Bob verified all the expenditure of that. We had we got them to produce spreadsheets that compared their pricing with other people's pricing for any work they did for us. But no matter how you cover yourself like that, and I think we were, there would always be this element of people say, jobs for the boys. So on reflection, I wouldn't have done that. I'd have used somebody else. And I would have gone wider in terms of taking people with us. But we needed to transform. We needed to actually make the impact. I would have handled it better. And what we did with that was give people the opportunity to have a go about things they didn't like. This was particularly the specialist groups. Because what we'd done is we'd stopped them just spending money willy-nilly. We'd got them to be responsible for what they spent, and responsible actually to Philip, but to the finance department for what they spent. They really didn't like that. So, and there's an enormous amount of money being spent and wasted. And they didn't think, a lot of these people didn't think that was anything to do with us. So, for example, a small group of 6 people, specialist group of 6 people, who seemed to only be part of BCS for 1 week of the year, and that was the year there was a Fortran group, and that was the week that there was a worldwide Fortran conference in Las Vegas, and we funded them going, and that was the only.
Yeah.
That was it, But we stopped it.
So it sounds like you feel that you brought a lot more structure and purpose and relevance to BCS.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, is that kind of the crowning achievement of your career? Is that the thing you're most proud of, or are there other things that you point to as your important achievements?
Well, we've gone through a lot, and there's a lot of things that I'm proud of doing. I think it's right up there in terms of what I think we set off to do with BCS, and a big task over a long period of time. And I think we achieved a lot of the things we wanted to do. Not everything, and I would have done some things differently, but I think we achieved a lot in that time. But then I think we achieved a lot with some of the other businesses in a shorter time.
Yeah.
But I think we achieved a lot in some of those as well.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of in the public domain, probably the BCS impact was bigger than any of the others. But I feel like if I hadn't done the BCS thing, I still feel like I would have achieved a lot of different things.
Yeah. What have you done since the BCS?
No, let's say Booker. Well, I stayed on a year longer than I was planning to, and we bought a business, of course.
Yeah.
The best tea rooms in the west of England, apparently, according to the Sunday Telegraph. Although I want to retire from that.
Yeah.
I'd like to have had more impact on the registered IT professional. Registered IT. It's not professional, is it? It's
the chartered IT professional.
No, the thing with Sainsbury.
Oh right. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's been a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and I was disappointed with that.
So that's something that you couldn't see through because you left the BC.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have seen it through because there was a real opportunity for BCS to get young people in and to start people on a proper profession in IT.
Yeah.
But when I left, that vision wasn't there, and it was passed down to a marketing department who saw it as an opportunity to recruit a relatively small number of new BCS members.
Yeah.
I saw it as much bigger than that. I thought it was something the profession needed, as did Sainsbury. He and I had long discussions about this whole thing before the thing started, and it is about getting young people to come into the IT profession.
Yeah.
Whether they're members of BCS is a secondary thing later.
But you, as I understand, you put that on track and
well, as best I could.
Part.
As best I could, yeah.
Can I ask you then if we draw a line under the history?
Yeah.
Looking forward, is there some advice that you'd give to anybody starting off in a career now in IT?
There are a number of times I think that it may be different now because there's so much greater understanding of IT now than there was at many of the stages I went through. But I feel like I let myself get talked out of things by people who had no idea what this profession was about or where it was going. And I think maybe at the time I wouldn't have thought it like this, but now I think I got talked out of that too easily. I should have just stuck in there because...
You're thinking about your industrial career there, are you?
Well, I'm thinking about,
you
for
could
instance...
have shaped the future of the business differently.
Well, I'm thinking like Trinity Mirror, for example.
Yeah.
They really should have been in the star internet. And I walked away from that too easily. And I think you have to, I suppose it's courage of your convictions. I'm battling the whole board at Trinity Mirror.
Yeah.
But on reflection, I wish I'd done it more.
Yeah.
Because I think Trinity Mirror now would be a very successful, very rich business.
So there's a piece of advice there about sticking to your guns.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Don't be put off by people, no matter how many of them seem to be lining up against you. If you really believe it, then go for it, and you'll find it's worth it in the end.
Right. Any other pieces of wisdom?
I think you've got to build. I always think that management is about developing people and developing a team, and I think it's really important to do that. It's really important to have a group of people you can trust and that work with you, no matter wherever you are. So I think you need to be looking to develop people and develop teams, because that is, in the end, this is, I suppose, a football thing, but in the end, that's what wins. You can't do it yourself. You need to build a team, get some really good people alongside, and work in that way, I think.
Very good.
That's it, I think.
Thank you for that, David. It's been very good talking to you.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for your time.